agenda item. Okay, it's item 6 on that table, so I'm not sure how that happened.
It is on the item 6 on the agenda.
Yes, it's
I see what you mean, yes.
item 6 on the agenda, and if you turn to the that paper, you'll see a background to it. So it's the election of chairperson. It's then followed by agenda item 7, which is election of deputy chairperson, but that is consequential on the outcome of item 6. So the first thing we need to do is determine for the election of the chairperson is to go to the choices we've got around the options for electing the person. There are 2 options, System A, which you're aware of, which is one that's if you like, a round-robin scenario. The second is System B, which is essentially first past the post. I think there's a good understanding of what those 2 options look like. Can we have a mover then for either one of those options? Councillor Foss, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that we use System B, which you referred to as like the first past the post type system for this process.
Thank you, Councillor Foss. Councillor Van Beek, you're seconding that?
Yep.
Do you wish to speak to any of those?
No, I do not. Thank you, Chair.
So we'll move straight to a vote on that. All those in favour of supporting the System B be adopted for this election process will say aye.
Aye.
Councillor Barker's got his thumb up, so we're taking that as an aye. All those against will say no. That's carried. We now will work on option or System B to elect the chair position. We'll go straight to a call for nominations, and Councillor Foley, you've got your hand up. You wish to nominate someone for the position of chair?
Yes, Councillor Curtin, could I please nominate Councillor Barker?
Councillor Barker's a nomination, and can we have a seconder for that? Councillor Van Beek, you've
I'll second that.
seconded that nomination. Are there any further nominations? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, nominate Councillor Ormsby for the position of chair.
You've nominated Councillor Ormsby for the position of chair. Is there a seconder for Councillor Ormsby for that position? Councillor Ormsby, you've seconded that. So we have 2 nominations for the position of chair. We'll take this opportunity to hear from the 2 candidates. Oh, sorry, I've jumped ahead of myself. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? I don't know if you were able to be elected to the chair, Afi, but there are no other nominations. So therefore we have 2 nominations for the position of chair, one being Councillor Ormsby and one being Councillor Barker. So what we'll do at this point is enable both those nominated persons to address us. I'm suggesting that we take a maximum of 5 minutes to do so. We know you well, and if you can't explain yourself in 5 minutes, well, so be it. Now we've got, we can either do this a randomly order or by alphabetical. If I said let's do this alphabetically, would that cause offence to one or the other of the nominated people?
No.
Christian or surname?
You're comfortable with that, Councillor Barker?
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
So where do you sit on the alphabet? It's
B
so Councillor Barker, would you kindly address the council as to your attributes for the position of chair?
Well, thank you, Chair. I have been the Deputy Chair now for 4 years. I've been on the council for quite some time. I've been close to all of the major issues that have developed within HBRC. I came here to the Regional Council with the previous Chair, Rex Graham, and others to bring about a series of reforms, not only in the financial area, but also in the environment area. And so I have a long experience with the Council. I also have a strong experience in governance. I note that on the broader stage, there's plans for changing the three waters, health reforms, RMA reforms, local government reforms, and I believe that my experience in both central government and local government will enable me to provide good leadership and advice to not only the regional council, but to the council and the province as a whole as we navigate our way through these reforms. I look forward to providing myself as a steady hand to complete the rest of this term, to continue the work that we've been doing, not only in the areas of environment, but also in our financial management. I've got a couple of things that I wish to put forward in support of this, is that I will continue the work of my former chair and mate, Rex Graham, and one of the things that he was very keen on was water and water security. I note that the latest research shows that the amount of rainfall falling in New Zealand for the last 2 decades has continued to decline, and anybody who's been watching the rainfall in Hawke's Bay will see that that's a reality here, and it will continue to decline. If we don't do something about water and water security in the immediate future, we are going to put our province in very difficult straits. So I'm going to have a high focus on that. The other issue is I work with Councillor Van Bake on coastal hazards. This is a really important piece of work. We've made some good strides, but I want to keep close to this and drive this over the line as well. My work to council on to date can be identified as being one of making things happen. For example, the IPO, more importantly for me, is about riparian plantings. When I came onto this council, we were planting about 500 metres of riparian plantings a year. We're now measuring in kilometres. I've also been instrumental in promoting Right Tree, Right Place and a huge investment in replanting of the region. So I put my name forward with experience, with opportunity to continue to add to the work we've done and make a commitment that I have both the time and the energy for the job, and I'm going to give it all of my very best.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Councillor Ormsby.
Kia ora. Kia hiwara, kia hiwara. Ko wai tēnei, e tuake nei, ko tātara te pātū watawata, ko hikurangi te maunga, ko tūtai kuri te awa rerere haere ki te whanganui a rotu. Puta ki ahurere ki te toka plānia, tōna tama ko more, hoki mai, I roto i ngā wai Māori, ne, ki enei hapu, ko Ngāti Pārau, ko Ngāti Hinepare, ko Ngāti Māhu, ko Ngai Tāwhao. Tuake nei au ki te mihi ki a koutou katoa. Ki ngā manuhiri I tai mai nei, ki roto I tēnei whare mahana, tēnā koutou katoa. Te whānau katoa I tai mai nei, ki a tautoko I a hau. Arā, ne, ko ngā tangata whenua I runga I tēnei kaunihira, ngā memo o te RPC, tēnā koutou mō tō tautoko I a hau, me ngā memo o ngā tai whenua o Heretanga, o Tamatea, tēnei te mihi mahana ki a koutou katoa. Ki te kaiwhakahaere ki a koe James, tēnā koe me ngā kaimahi kei roto I tēnei whare. Kia ora tātou. Aroha mai for my back. Our community is expecting a leader to be here, to be present and to be available. It's a very simple but selfless expectation. And who is willing to put in the time? I will be present and anyone who knows me knows that I will do the mahi. I will drop my outside interests and this will be my only job.
Just pause for a moment. Can we sort that, please?
Brett, can you mute your microphone, please?
That's better. Sorry, Councillor. Continue.
So make no mistake about this, that this is a full-time job. We were lucky to have Rex to fulfil this. He set the bar high, and whoever becomes chair today should aim no lower. As we move towards a co-governance model with our treaty partners, we need leadership that walks the tightrope towards finding wins for all so that our people can succeed. Someone who's prepared to do the many hours of work it takes to read, to consult, to understand all angles of a problem is what is expected. but furthermore, that builds consensus both in the community and around the council table to effect change better. Navigating our journey between that of the Pākehā and the Māori worldview is going to be our region's biggest challenge going forward together. We've heard loud and clear the pushing and the pulling of both worlds, but infrequently do we hear consensus. Tēnā koe te rangatira tiare. You and I have had some pretty honest conversations this week, and I ask you to not doubt my commitment towards ensuring the success of us as Māori people is realised. Like you, I'm a product of our tipuna, and I'm here to work as hard as I can to ensure that the world we leave for our mokopuna and for their mokopuna yet to be born is theirs to inherit as kaitiaki as we are. I'm calling on your support to realise this. To Jurif and Will, the men who work the land and feed our peoples and economies, tēnā kōrua. Climate change is here, and your colleagues that aren't in the room with us today, more than anything, need certainty. They need certainty that they have sufficient water at the right time and the right quantity to produce their foods. But couple that with the aspirational tidal wave of tangata whenua for the revitalisation of life essence for our lands and our waters. We need to make sure we get consensus around this. So strong and hard-working leadership is needed to navigate both worlds, to find common outcomes that ensure sustainability for both our environment and our livelihoods. My leadership will bridge this gap as I'll work my backside off to ensure that we walk this path towards true partnership and equitable sustainability together. Because if we elect leadership that can't fill this wide void between treaty partners, then uncertainty and the inability to plan for the future will become our norm. Uncertainty and the inability to plan for the future has the potential to become the new business landscape. And who do you propose can do this from around this table? Someone who is willing to do the mahi and commit to this job seriously for years. Who can work collaboratively across all factions of our community intuitively. To Martin, last month you gave us Sir David Attenborough's book entitled My Witness Statement. By the end of this year, I'll have planted with our community in the Ahuriri catchment 10,000 rako, native trees all grown at home, with the hands of mine and my husband's. You've stood next to me while we've planted trees along the Taipua stream, and you, Neil, also stood beside me while the three of us championed the creation of the Ahuriri Regional Park for the Regional Council. So I'm now asking you both to stand beside me again so that we can bring to life that vision of protecting and enhancing our environment which it so desperately needs. To Craig, I've heard your inspired calls for the improved health of Te Karamu. I promise you here and now that I'll personally grow and koha 1,000 native trees for along the Karamu. Next winter, we can plant those together. And hey, even if you get a better offer from a councillor here, I'll still promise you that. Ka pai. And to Rick, e te rangatira Rick, a man who carries the mana of a lifetime of championing the working man from a humble West Coast mining stock. Tēnā koe, Rick. To drive and commit the time required to achieve for our Hawke's Bay region is too hard when you're forced to lead in areas outside our region. I ask you now to champion a girl from a working class family, raised in Maraenui, whose father was a tomoana meat worker, and my mum here, a social worker. The values of fairness for all that you've based your life's work on can be guaranteed to be championed for the next 30 years in my hands. Whatever arrangement leadership looks like, at the end of the day, your skills are valued and needed but it won't be achieved alone without the work ethic and the commitment of time to deliver it. In the end, if the outcomes we all collectively want are to be realised, then we need a chairperson who's prepared to sit down, to meet, to challenge, to collaborate many times over in order to build consensus and agreement for how we move forward together. This is a job for a person willing to work 40 hours plus a week, with the region's success for all as the core value. And I'm putting my hand up for this monumental task. And all I ask is that if that person isn't me, then those attributes and those promises that I've just made are promised in spades by the next person. Koira, kua takoto te manu kei hoama, kia kaha kia maia, mauri ora. Kia ora.
Thank you to both nominated for the position. I think we've come to the crucial point now of electing the chair. So I'll ask for councillors, if you don't mind, to raise your hands, and we'll take them in order, the alphabetical order, the same as we did in speaking order. So all those in favour of Councillor Barker for the position of chair, will you please raise your hands? So we have five. Six. Sorry, my apologies. Oh, Rick, sorry, missed you out. Who are you supporting, Rick?
I could have moved him.
So we have 6 votes for Councillor Barker. I'll now ask those supporting Councillor Ormsby to raise their hands, please. So there are 2 votes for Councillor Ormsby. It's pretty clear and obvious that Councillor Barker is the appointee, the elected person from this council. So therefore I declare that Councillor Barker to be the chair of council. Councillor Barker, do you wish to speak at this point?
Briefly, just to say thank you very much for your support. I heard Henry Wai's speech loud and clear, and can I just say to Councillor Ormsby, I will be the harshest critic of myself, as I always have been for all of my life. I set expectations for myself, and all the things that you aim and look for, I do as well. I'm sorry I can't be with you, but it's the government directive, and who am I to disobey the New Zealand government? So I'll be home as soon as I can and be working at full speed.
Councillor Barker, I'm not sure whether you've got in front of you the declaration by the chairperson for the role. If you have, would you mind reciting your declaration, please?
Could you just give me a moment? I filed that. I did get it. I just need to go to my correspondence. Leanne, declaration 3. Yes, I, Richard John Barker, declare that I will faithfully and impartially. Oh, it's gone. Where's my inbox? Where's inbox? Inbox, HBRC, HBRC. Where is it?
I don't know if that was in the declaration. But,
Yeah. It's just taking so long.
all right, well, we'll take it.
I've read the thing. I can read it all out, but Leanne, here we are, declaration. It's coming up. Sorry, the Wi-Fi here is a little bit slow. Here we are, Leanne. Where are we? In case you need it. I, Richard John Barker, declare that I will faithfully and impartially, and according to the best of my skill and judgment, execute and perform in the best interests of the Hawke's Bay region the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as the Chair of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, or any other act. I so swear, and I will sign when I get home.
Well, we've got that declaration, and we're in the position of of needing to elect a deputy chair. As from our understanding of the situation, upon making that direct declaration, Rick, unfortunately, you've lost the position of deputy chair. I know that'll be a problem for you, but we'll go with it. So we now have a vacancy for the election of the deputy chairperson, and we'll now go to that process. And I think we also need to confirm once again the voting process for that. So can we have an indication or a mover for the system? So Councillor Williams is moving system B for this election, and Councillor Ormsby has seconded that. Do you wish to speak to that? No. So those in favour of adopting system B for the election of deputy chair will say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no. That's carried. So system B is the system of choice for this election of deputy chair. So we'll now move to nominations for that position, and I'll call for nominations for the position of deputy chair. Councillor Van Beek.
I wish to nominate Councillor Will Foley as the deputy of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council.
Thank you, Councillor Van Beek. Is there a seconder for that position? Councillor Lambert seconding that. So we have one nomination, that of Councillor Foley for the position of deputy chair. Are there any further nominations? Councillor Williams.
If I could nominate Councillor Ormsby for the position of Deputy Chair, Mr Chairman.
Chair, thank you. I'm happy to second that nomination. So there are two nominations for the position of deputy chair. Are there any other nominations for the position? There are being none. We now have two nominees for the position of deputy chair. Would the two nominees wish to speak to their nomination? Councillor Foley.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you to Councillor Van Beek and Councillor Lambert either side of me there for that nomination and recognising my potential for the role. I acknowledge Councillor Ormsby's speech regarding all those attributes and issues around the leadership of this council and concur with everything he said. Chair, I agree. After the last 18 months, we should all know each other pretty well, and so I don't feel like I have to explain myself really much further. What you say is what you get, and sometimes I feel like I repeat myself because I bang on about the same issues. But I guess since I was approached about this role to consider it, I've thought long and hard about the future of this organisation and what part I could play in it. But I guess there's probably 3 points to talk to today, and particularly in regard to now that we have our new chair, Councillor Chair Barker. Those 3 points would be tangata whenua relationships, and we obviously started a couple of months back voting in the Māori wards, and it's just another step in the journey, but we have a huge way to go with regards to building those relationships and partnerships. And while I don't pretend to have as many relationships as nearly the rest of you, the ones I have are very strong, and I feel I'm more than capable of continuing to build on those. The other thing that I think that's probably coming at us is our engagement with the rural sector. So you'll notice around the country a lot of farmers starting to gather up some momentum, if you like. Tractor rallies starting to be spoken of simply because of all this regulation coming at them fast and hard. And it is up to us to implement a lot of that's coming from central government, as well as our own regulation. We're in the advantage in Central Hawke's Bay that Tukituki Plan Change 6 has been there for some time, and so our farmers down there have had time to adjust and get used to those regulations, but a lot of the rest of Hawke's Bay haven't, and that's still coming at them like the rest of the country. That engagement will be critical for this organisation, particularly around the environmental gains that we want to achieve. I applaud Councillor Foss, Councillor Ormsby and many of you others around the Karamu Stream project, the Ahuriri Regional Park, but they're tiny in the bigger scheme of things in terms of the total area of Hawke's Bay. It is the farmers that are our caretakers of the majority of our land. And so I see that as critical going forward. Finally, I'd just like to, speak to Chair Barker, and the relationship with him as deputy is obviously a critical one in any partnership at the top amongst our leadership. And look, it's been a rewarding 18 months working with Councillor Barker, getting to know each other, and as you've experienced, we're quite often on the opposite side of things, yet we've built up a mutual respect and a working relationship. And so I think that's critical going forward in terms of the deputy and chair roles. So I'll leave it at that. And Councillor Ormsby, if you want to.
Thank you, Councillor Foley. Councillor Ormsby, do you wish to?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tēnā koe, Chair, and thank you to my nominators who are supporting me to stand and lead with Rick. And I just want to say with Rick, he was one of the two with Rex who came around and encouraged me to run for this council. And I definitely could work with Rick. And Rick, you say you'll be your toughest critic. I'll be happy to be the second toughest critic of myself also, because I believe if we have shared vision and shared values that we can do it, even though we might have certain views that are not in line, whether it be on the issue. But I would absolutely be honoured to work with you, Rick. Your government experience and your connections there's a lot to learn in terms of our relationship with central government, particularly when we move into the new reform space and we're not sure how councils are going to look in the next 4 or 5 years. And a part of that is our relationship with tangata whenua. And I can't think of a bigger challenge. And yes, our farming community, and I'm glad we have you here, Will, as chair of our drought committee, our TB-free committee. We need your views, absolutely, and the farming community is important, but I think further than that, what's more important is going to be our relationship with tangata whenua. We're going to have 2 new seats around this table next term. So the dynamic is going to be one of a challenge that we have to overcome and bridge. I don't think we're going to have 2 farming seats here next term. Not to say we'll not have 2 farmers, but you get my drift. It is that we're going to have to overcome and bridge the void. And we're doing it already. So I would like to call on the councillors here who would support me and able to lead us forward together and bridge that void. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Well, councillors, we've heard from 2 wonderful councillors who are more than able to fulfil the role, but we need to make a decision. And I'll now ask for your vote. If you can please raise your hand in the first instance for the nomination of Councillor Foley. So those in favour of Councillor Foley becoming the Deputy Chair will raise their hands. Rick.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
So we now come to the support for Councillor Ormsby. Those in favour of supporting Councillor Ormsby for the position of Deputy Chair will raise their hand. That's 3. So it's with pleasure that I declare that Councillor Will Foley is the Deputy Chair of the Regional Council. And we have a declaration for Will. I'm taking it. No, there's no declaration. No. Gosh, you don't even have. It's just like that, instant. And
Congratulations.
on that note, I will ask Councillor Foley, as the office holder with the new responsibility, to take the chair, and I'll gladly depart.
Come back tomorrow, is it?
Yeah, that's enough.
Another shocker, Neil. Another shocker.
Thank you for that, Rick. Well, I wouldn't be such a silly idea.
I'll be the one calling it. It's a shock. It's a shock.
Voting votes were in alignment with our on hearing from home.
As much as I tried to change the card. We gotta do what we gotta do.
Wish I'd have taken that.
I've got a question about standing orders.
Will? No, you don't. Just take a minute and have a breath.
Yeah.
That's for you, so up to the floor. Oops. You might need another Karakia. Keep them working. So yes, we need to go back to the follow-up items.
Oh, well, look, just before we carry on, I'll just, obviously thank you, everyone, for your support. And Hanoi, well done for putting your hand up and being very strong on your position. And I meant it when I said you're on the same page, and so I look forward to working with you and everyone else. And hopefully our chair will be back soon and can take over.
Yeah, now going to Australia.
Australia first.
So look, if we could just carry on with the agenda then, and we're up to the follow-ups from the previous meetings.
Thank you, Chair. So there are 3 of those. They've all been actioned with this comment in relation to those, so happy to take any questions from councillors if there are any.
No questions there.
So we just have
We'll have someone move those follow-ups.
I'll move them.
Thank you, Councillor Van Beek.
Second.
Second by Councillor Curtin. All those in favour?
All right.
All right.
Do we need to go through?
No, they're not part of that. So.
Okay. Any calls for minor items today? Knowing that we're probably going to be pretty pushed for time. No calls for minor items?
Let's move to the adoption of the long-term plan.
So just, up to another very important item on the agenda today, which is adoption of the 2021 to 2031 long-term plan. So do we have anyone that's going to speak?
Thank you, Chair. So, look, I'll introduce this item and offer Jess an opportunity to speak to it as well if she wishes. It's my honour to present this 2021 to 2031 long-term plan to Council today. It's the culmination of over 18 months' work, a considerable amount of work by councillors, by staff, and a considerable volume of engagement by our community. This is another significant step change in the journey of this organisation. It presents a continued upward trajectory in terms of revenue expenditure for the organisation to grow capability, particularly in the areas of freshwater, biodiversity, and our response to climate change. This long-term plan has a number of new and innovative initiatives with respect to our climate response, and I won't go through all those, but it is a significant additional focus for this organisation, and also an evolution of how we think about delivering things like public transport into a climate crisis era. What is particularly noteworthy about this long-term plan is the increase in capital expenditure, particularly over the next couple of years. And so there is a significant body of work being undertaken, particularly in the area of asset management and across the Council's full set of assets, which leverages a significant amount of funding from central government, which has occurred both out of the Provincial Growth Fund and then more latterly out of the government's COVID response. What Council is able to do in adopting this long-term plan today is to leverage the strong balance sheet of Council, the very low interest rate environment we're in, and a large amount of central government funding to achieve a once-in-a-generation opportunity to strengthen our flood protection assets for future generations, and also to provide water security solutions to the drying climate that is forecast for our region. So while the previous long-term plan was very much about operational activity and putting more boots on the ground, and that has continued to some extent here, this long-term plan is even more about the Council's assets and about the capital expenditure. There is a rating impact, obviously, for this long-term plan, and the rates adoption will come to the next Council meeting for decision-making. So today is about adopting the financial strategy and the infrastructure strategy, of which those rates in part fund. I think it's noteworthy that the increase in rates, while large in percentage terms, still relatively dwarfed by the funding contributions from central government over the next few years, from the increase in the performance of our investment assets, and through an ongoing increase in user charges on those that benefit most from Council services. So all of the levers of Council available to this Council financially have been pulled for this long-term plan to deliver that step change. With that, I'd just like to pay tribute to the team that have pulled together the long-term plan document and process. The 315 pages of long-term plan that you're presented with today is, in my estimation, a significant step up in any long-term plan presented by this Council. There's no need to apologise for its length and its detail, because the long-term plan is the one accountability document that the community should be able to read and comprehensively understand. What is this Council going to deliver? Why is it delivering it? What are the performance metrics by which success will be measured? And how is it going to be funded? And the impact of those funding decisions on ratepayers. That information is set out comprehensively over 315 pages and provides a very sound basis for this organisation to not only plan its activity, but to communicate what it is doing over this period. This has been a huge amount of work with some blood, sweat and tears by a number of people, and I do want to acknowledge Desiree Cull and the strategy and governance team for their role in pulling this together. Jess and the finance team and the marketing communications team for their enormous body of work in developing this long-term plan, consulting on it, and developing all the financial models that underpin it. And also to the asset management team for their exemplary work in pulling together a comprehensive infrastructure strategy as well. So look, it has been a team effort right across the organisation, and it's a credit to this organisation that we have such a high quality document to present you with today for adoption. So Jess, is there anything you want to add on financial side?
No, not particularly. Just probably point out that the paper does include a table which provides some detail explaining the changes to the Treasury policy, and probably just sort of details or explains the maturity of the financial and investment strategy that really just demonstrates the growth of the organisation, both in its size and complexity. But I'm happy to take any questions, particularly on those changes to the Treasury policy.
Any questions from the Councillor Foss?
Thank you, and just take note to congratulate you, Chair and Deputy Chair, on your new roles, but I also congratulate my colleague Hinawai in her standing up to be counted. I admire you hugely. Can I just echo the CEO's comments in and around just the effort that it's taken to get this LTP? I think it's quite a step change. I also totally echo sentiments around all the hard work, because many in the public, particularly the vast audience watching this, probably doesn't appreciate there's about 3 or 4 other layers of change going on. We have a new financial system landing. We have a reconfiguration of HBRIC, which we'll be coming to later. We've had a new procurement policy going through, and of course a Treasury policy of necessity, of an organisation for necessity, on top of the normal regulatory requirements. So to Jess and you and your team, thank you so much for help lurching us into the new millennium financially. This is going to be a $100 million operational organisation in about 5 years. So it's essential that we have such policies in there. So, Mr. Chair, I won't comment further than that, other than I did want to seize the moment to acknowledge that. I will intend to speak quite a bit later on the HBRIC investment, or SOI at least, which I'll go over some of these same items, so I won't want to repeat myself.
Sure. Any further
Chair, was that a question?
Yeah, I was going to say question time first.
I seized the moment to acknowledge some of my colleagues and the old lady in Havelock.
Councillor Curtin.
If there are no questions, Mr. Chair, I'd be very happy to move the recommendation to. No?
Okay, so we have a mover to adopt the LTP. Councillor Foss, I think, had his hand up first to second that.
That's right.
So you'd like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Chair. Pleased to see you in the chair, and it's a privilege to be working with you, and to acknowledge my good colleague, Councillor Ormsby, and our brand new chair, wherever he is. Thank you, Rick. Looking forward to working with you over the next 16, 18 months. It'll be a pleasure. If you're staying in Australia, that's no. We'll welcome you home with open arms. Mr. Chair, this is a document that has been very substantially worked on by everyone in this room. Every councillor has made a huge contribution, but particularly those that have constructed it in the background have had to listen to our impenetrable contributions from time to time, and have brought this together and have made a wonderful job. This is the document that we pin our hat on. This is the thing that guides us for the next decade. It's meant to be visionary, forward-thinking, but at the same time accommodating the resources that we've got available to us. My major thank you to Jess for bringing such acute intelligence to the plan. It's an extraordinary document, I think unmatched in terms of the conditions you've had to work in. Also to Desiree Cull. Desiree has performed an extraordinary job in constructing, wordsmithing and bringing the document together in a coherent way, and those around her that have contributed to that. I'm just overawed by the quality of the document that we've got before us. Mr. Chair, just briefly, if you don't mind, I will reference the paper we've got in front of us, which very succinctly pulls together the various strands of the document. And you can see right from the get-go, key decisions, 6.1 to 6.5, are very much a focus on the issues that affect this region, particularly climate change, right tree, right place. That's our investment. Repair the damage of the past, but at the same time, let's do something about what our future looks like, unless we cloak the land as much as we possibly can. Future water use, $1 million to be spent over 3 years. The gravel extraction, again protecting our environment. The Aharere Regional Park, a sentinel park that hopefully will guide other decisions across the waterways and reaches of that zone around Napier City. But particularly, and I think it's becoming more apparent to me, the opportunity around public transport, and I want to thank my colleague, Councillor Williams, for pulling together, which I think is one of the most innovative schemes around, to offer on-the-spot transport from A to B is going to be where the rubber hits the road in the future, if you excuse my expression. We've got the Clive River dredging, we've got the Wairau Regional Park, we've got an enormous amount of energy and work going in front of us, and I want to further refer you to section 11 onwards, councillors, the financial strategy, the revenue strategy, the treasury policy, and thank my colleague Councillor Foss for helping guide us through some of those issues, but particularly to reference what I think is an extraordinarily talented treasury and finance team who are able to recognise that this long-term plan, as opposed to the one produced in previous trienniums, is a particularly significant one for the investments that we've got in front of us. We now have multi-million-dollar investments to manage, entirely different dynamic in front of us than my experience way back in 2001, when that equation was simply not available to us. So we've got what I think are very significant policies and strategies in play, and the right people in the right place to make sure we extract for the public and the ratepayers and the people of Hawke's Bay maximum benefit out of the resources that we've got available. Councils around the country are very few in having to respond and meet the challenge that is presented by such a portfolio. And there's some detail there, and I'm sure Councillor Foss will highlight some of those going through. But I want to particularly, I think in closing, before I close, Mr. Chair, go to paragraph 12 of your paper. And that paragraph, if you like, sums up what the actual consequences of our decision-making really is. The package of initiatives in the long-term plan equate to a 19.5% rate increase in year one, 15% in year two, 14.5% in year three. What we're doing is putting our hands into the pockets of so many in our community for so much, and it brings home to me the urgency and determination we must share, and I certainly share this with Councillor Foley, who has to front up to the people who often are paying the very most out of their own pockets for this expenditure. We know it's needed. We've deliberated long around this. We've made some very tough decisions, but determined that this outcome is where we need to be. And unfortunately for the hapless ratepayers of the region, this is only the start. We know that the Three Waters scenario is going to really burden the region over the next few years. We've got our coastal hazard strategy, ably led by my colleague, Councillor Van Beek. We know that's going to cost the ratepayer a lot of money. So we've got this conundrum in front of us, matching the expectations and requirements of the community and trying to balance what they can afford to pay. And that's the challenge for this next decade, one which I'm sure we will be up to. Well, look, finally, Mr Chair, as I often say, finally, I'd just like to commend the document to the public of Hawke's Bay, to the ratepayers, to thank in particular our Chief Executive for continuing to lead a team, an extraordinary team, and to produce this sort of result, which is certainly in my time is unprecedented in its quality, depth and draft, and therefore I'm happy to support the adoption of this long-term plan for the next decade.
Thank you, Councillor Curtin. Councillor Force.
Thank you. Continuing where I left off earlier, colleagues. Just ditto to what Councillor Curtin's just described there. It is a significant document. It's a particularly significant document for the new councillors around the table, because this is our roadmap for the next 10 years. And this is obviously what we intend to do, what we're supposed to do as prescribed by government, but it's also the key here is the haste and the passion in which we're trying to do what is right. And as our previous chair often said, and it's in this document here, the introduction, we're trying to catch up on underspending or underinvestment in some of our environmental protections or mitigations over many years. This is why some of these numbers do seem so large. We are custodians of the ratepayers' balance sheet. It isn't ours. We have to manage it with absolute care, which is why a lot of attention has gone into the financial strategy as in part 3 of our document, and of course the things are in and around that, the treasury policy, etc. All these things keep our balance sheet safe. There is a theme running through there which is a change, and again I'll talk a bit more under the HBRIC part of it, but one key thing is a bit of a change in narrative in that commercial decisions, commercial investments, commercial risk aren't first and foremost don't belong in this organisation. Doesn't mean they can't, it just means first and foremost they don't. But when we make that decision and allow that to go to HBRIC, as we'll talk about later, it allows this organisation to absolutely focus its operational income on those core environmental things which the public expect us to do and we want to do and do fast. One final note, Mr Chair, those that are looking at the document, please pay attention to how much actually discretion we have as a council in some of the spending increases that are embedded in this report. Many of these are actually directly result of decisions from Wellington or one-off expenditure increases from the Provincial Growth Fund, etc. On that note, Mr Chair, I'll finish there, other than acknowledging again everyone that's helped make this document to the position it is in, and I'll speak further under the HBRIC part of this conversation.
Any further speakers? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and again echo my colleagues' congratulations to you, and I really look forward to working with you, Will, and what you bring to this table. I'd like to apologise for the flippant comment I made in response to Councillor Foss. He was trying to make a serious point, and I made light of it in my remark. Equally, can I acknowledge the staff? You know, you have quite literally walked over broken glass and hot coals and everything else uncomfortable, burnt all candles at both ends, and this organisation just really can't pay enough tribute to that dedication to the cause to produce the document. You've taken us through meticulously over 12 months now, step by step. Every policy, every section of this document has been introduced to us in workshops. You have then equally meticulously addressed our concerns, issues, queries in terms of the next draft when we've come to approve it. And so the document now we can fully own. We know it, we understand it, and that's, you know, without that leadership through the process from the staff, we couldn't have got there. I was particularly, just to give one example, when we first saw the investment policy, I made a point that we needed to retain the significance of ensuring that our 51% stake in the port was secure as a strategic asset, and that has found its way into the final draft. That's just but one. I don't know how many other examples of that kind that there are. Some which I've raised which were at the opposite end of the scale of significance. Just in terms of funding, yes, it's a 20% rate increase, and it would have been a 40% rate increase. And there's only so much we can do with our balance sheet to borrow for operating expenses. This is really, I guess, a harbinger of the need for local government reform, and we heard that at the workshop last week or the week before. Rates are just not going to cut it this century in local government. We cannot do and deliver what central government asks of us through a land value or capital value system on ratepayers. They just can't take it, and we can't deliver it. And yet we have, within what tools we have got, really stepped up to the challenge that central government has presented to us. So just a very quick note on transport. Thank you, Councillor Curtin. I'm very excited and proud of that. Well, I will be proud of it when it works. And we've got a big journey ahead of us in terms of getting to know our community's needs for the trial over the next 6 to 12 months now before we see minibuses on the ground in Hastings. It is a big burden on the ratepayer over 10 years, 6.8 million. Equally, if I look across the long-term plan financials on page 144, you are looking at, close to $70 or $80 million investment in public transport, and it's just not working. So we have to do something different, and if that's a 10% or a 5% cost on the total, but we have a step change in uptake of public transport, we provide greater equity of access to transport, and we reduce emissions, well, I'm up for it. Finally, the very significant investments that this plan represents in the kotahi plan process through additional staffing, through engagement with mana whenua, that is something that is going to be vitally important to produce the kotahi plan that is a leader nationally in the integration of mātauranga into the format and content of the plan, not just a chapter on tangata whenua, but right throughout. And equally as to how we tackle climate change, not just as a chapter, but infused right throughout. My vision, my dream, if I hang up my boots at the end of whatever term the electorate gives me, and we've delivered a blueprint for a region in which we can be net zero carbon and yet live healthy and productive lives, I will feel content with that achievement. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Lindberg.
Yeah. Once again, congratulations to our new chair and deputy chair. But I think for us as councillors, that's not where it stops. We actually need to support them, and we need to, continue to work hard, and don't think that they actually will do it for us. It's the work starts here. But I'm extremely happy that we actually have got town and country at that top end of the table, which has always been my aim, and I've never been silent about that. I fully support the long-term plan. It's the best long-term plan I've ever seen, but I must be honest, it's the only one I've ever seen. But Neil, Councillor Curtin, has been many years before us, and I'll take his word for it. He's always pedantic when it comes to these things, so I take his word for it. And once again, thank you for all the work that you've done. And it's not, you've sacrificed for that, all the staff, so I really appreciate that. I've only got one small concern, and that is in regards to the work that I've done in Tank. The Ahuriri estuary is in a very poor state. And it's like with Te Karamu, with the Ahuriri estuary, I'm asking exactly the same question. We're spending a lot of money on a regional park. Is that the best outcome for that estuary? Are we going to clean up the estuary by having a regional park? I just want to put that on the table, and maybe that will become one of my little hobby horses, and I'll keep you guys to account on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ormsby.
Congratulations, Will, on taking up chairmanship for today, and a little bit longer until Rick, you come back. Congratulations on your chairmanship. And just a big mihi to the staff, really, for the amount of work, especially you, Jess. running all those dragon dens with us and having to fiddle around with every single yearly item and what it means for rates, and we're 100% conscious that we were trying to be fair. We're trying to be fair to the public with the rate increase, as well as trying to do some of the work of the past that hadn't been done, but also looking forward and trialling things like right tree, right place, and also the on-demand transport. Thank you for leading that. Because unless we invest in understanding better and new ways to do these things, we won't know into the future. So thank you for putting your hand out, putting your leg out and saying, let's trial this. And for us to listen to it and support that as well. Thank you, Neil, for chairing through the corporate and strategic and all our finances, statement of intent, and our HBRIC members who are here to help financially guide us through that also. But I'm really proud of what has been produced for the LTP and 100% endorse where we're going. And that I think in 3 years' time we'll be able to look back and say, I think we nearly got that right. And how do we build on further? So thank you everyone. I'm happy to endorse this.
Councillor Lambert.
Yeah, kia ora. With the long-term plan, I found that it was actually a hard sell to try and push that 19.5% out there. It was really, really difficult, and a lot of our farmers in our community, they just said, it's 19.5 for you, but for us it ends up being about 30. And those realisations are actually quite difficult when you hear the whole room saying that. I take the point that it is a really neat plan, but I think there is a lesson in there that we as Martin said, it's rates and that are not going to cut it in the future, and we shouldn't be trying to go for the top of the hill when we should be just making sure we can all get up there together. So, I'm in for a bit more of a conservative view in the future. Still a good plan, but at what cost?
Yeah, well said, Councillor. Newly elected chair, would you like to talk?
I'm off, but thank you. Thank you, Chair. Firstly, let me say to Councillor Ormsby, a fantastic candidacy, really strong, impressive, and we're all should be deeply grateful for the amount of energy you put into that, and I'm certainly very impressed. To Will, congratulations. I look forward to working with you and to all the councillors. We've got a lot to do. I'll just make a couple of brief points. Firstly, I want to go back to the point that James made, that it wasn't that long ago that we had a balance sheet which had 600 million on it. We now have a balance sheet of 600 million. So this is a huge growth in the asset and the balance sheet of this region. We are all richer for this. Second point is that we've got vastly more money being spent on environmental issues, on enforcement, across the board. The activity of this regional council has grown dramatically, and that's going to help us in the future and help repair the things of the past. The third point I make is this is a much more complex organisation now than when I first arrived here, and I really appreciate that. I think this is a benefit to the region. To the team, James and Jess, I say to both of you, you've done a fantastic job on these documents. They are much better and stronger for your professionalism. These read really well. There's two minor points. Firstly, I note that we have a person in this for the karamu, and we have a person for climate change mitigation. I just want to say this is one issue on which I lost heavily. I'm team, I'm going to accept that I lost on this one, but I'm going to continue to remind you of it. I think climate change is the issue for us in the future, and we have to do more in the mitigation area. And one person for the karamu and one person for the issue that threatens all of us, climate change, has got the balance right. The last thing I'd say is that on this is that when I think about the value of the rates and what we can afford, I've worked out just on the back of an envelope, I pay approximately $60 a week as a rate paid to both the local council and the regional council in rates. I think I get extraordinarily good value out of the $60. I get water coming out of my tap. I get a road, a footpath to go up and down on. I get a library if I want to use it, parks for kids to play on, and so on. I think we underestimate the value we get from it. And when I compare that with the sorts of things we spend our money on, like streaming services, Sky Sport, music, and so on, Netflix, I think our council rates provide excellent value for money, tangible benefits to us. And I do think we need to relook at how we get the public to appreciate the value they get from their rates. Maybe it's too hard an ask to do, but that's my view about it. I think the councils do a great job. Happy to support this, and I think the team has done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike.
First of all, congratulations to Councillor Barker and of course Councillor Foley on your recent appointments to the various chair positions. Well done. And also commiserations, but also tautoko to Councillor Ormsby for putting herself forward. Someone so young, and of course being the only wahine at the table as well. It was good to see that mana wahine stood up for the challenge. I just wanted to echo and support all the words that have been said in regards to the long-term plan. I really just wanted to thank and congratulate the councillors. I think you've done a great job over the last 12 months. You have really challenged this long-term plan. You have challenged it along every step of the way. And you got there. You have got there. You have challenged yourselves. You have challenged the staff. And I also want to recognise the commitment you have made to tangata whenua within the long-term plan. Really appreciate it, especially in regards to resourcing your Māori Relationship Board, because at the end of the day, to improve the relationship between yourselves and tangata whenua, you have to have the capacity within the organisation itself to have the conversations. Up till recently, that has been very hard. When we try to have the conversations with various councils and they actually don't have the capacity or the capability to actually have those conversations and take them somewhere. So thank you very much for that. Kia ora tātou.
Api. Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, congratulations on your appointment. Deputy Chair, my apologies already, there's a coup going on. And to you, our new elected Chair, and ngā mihi nui ki a koe, hinewai, we look forward to other opportunities in the future and what those conversations may bring forward. And so to the LTP. Huge commitment, huge indicators. So first off the bat, well done to the staff. I am a newbie in local politics, really. I've only been at the game for 5 years. And when I look at how long Rex has been serving, not just at the helm here, but within the communities, that certainly makes me one of the youngest pups sitting in the kennel. So to our staff and to the work that you've achieved in the last 2 years, particularly with a massive interruption around COVID, there was at least 3 on recall, significant natural events which required substantial amounts of our staff to divert away to address those, all while dealing with some basic human needs and wellbeing issues at the same time, while investing in civil defence. So to our staff at an operational level, James, to you and your team, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa, kia mau tau kē tō mahi. Just absolutely awesome. What a trial by fire for you and your team, and you have come out definitely showing through these figures that you have worked diligently to try and find the best solution you can for the councillors to consider. So to you and your staff, awesome. To our councillors, thank you very much. I've been watching as you've deliberated over the various aspects of the features of this LTP, and as has already been mentioned, we have a very small serving dish and a large roast to fit on it. And so in other words, the resources we have compared to the task ahead of us seems almost exponentially difficult and almost impossible to achieve. But nonetheless, your comments and your passion, your willingness to toss all the points and find a common ground has led to an LTP which I think, despite the cost implications for us as ratepayers, are about, for me, communicating an express will and desire of this council to start tackling some of the big issues. And we can't take the whole elephant at one chunk. So to our councillors who recognise the serious challenges coming forward across all spectrums, thank you for the way in which you have openly and honestly debated those opportunities and provided mechanisms for our communities to come and submit to this LTP. So I'm generally hopeful that despite the slope that is referred to on the journey that we're undertaking, the indicators that have been put forward by yourself, Mr. the Deputy Chair, and your colleagues is hugely encouraging, because it shows that we're not lying about the task ahead of us. We've got our eyes wide open and we're prepared to take on some of those hard korero. And so in line with that, the result of our chair and deputy chair elections, from a tangata whenua perspective, we had a different gambit, but we didn't even know who the candidates were really. So we looked at you all and wondered who we might consider from a strategic point of view. The decision belongs to council, and so our job was to work with council around how we meet the outcomes we expressed in the LTP. But as far as mana whenua is concerned, particularly the pressures that are coming from central government upon staff, upon council, are also being placed upon iwi. We are acutely aware of the 181-year legacy that poor environmental science has left us all. And so I commend those of us sitting at the table who are prepared to stand up and be counted in what is the beginning of a difficult journey for us all. And as we go forward, my only word would be around, I am hugely encouraged by the way Rex led this council in his term as an elected member. I note with interest our new Māori staff, our new features within the LTP, which provide for capacity, which provide for mana whenua engagement, which provide for a more collaborative approach from a community level and a mana whenua level. These things were not present when I first really started here only 5 to 6 years ago. The atmosphere amongst the council here to try and build those collaborative spaces to work together under a kotahi plan are still there. And so with bated breath and slight apprehension, we wait and we hope that any changes at the top will only result in an intensification in wanting to build those places and not a retrenchment or a pulling away from strengthening of partnerships and the resourcing of some of these activities that we need to achieve. So I'm speaking in favour of the LTP, and I acknowledge our staff and I acknowledge our councillors for what has been a difficult journey, and consequently we wait as mana whenua to continue to look for proactive opportunities to strengthen not only this organisation but our environmental outcomes. So ngā mihi nunui ki a koutou katoa.
Thank you, Api. And Michelle, did you have anything to say?
Kia ora,
Sure.
well, and congratulations to you and Rick for your chair and deputy chair. I'll keep it short. It's about the environmental issues and who are the winners. And I agree with Rick that our biggest issue today is climate change. You only have to look at the weather at the moment. And we really need to acknowledge that. We really need to acknowledge climate change because this is about the future of our mokopuna. When it comes to, I just heard who was the councillor that mentioned the Ahiriri Regional Park, and I'm an avid native tree grower, but it's point discharges. It's industrial issues that are impacting the poor Ahiriri estuary. And I'm not sure a regional park is going to cut it. What's going to cut it is addressing those point discharges, and we're dealing with them here. So, but I do appreciate what's been done for tangata whenua with the Māori constituencies and a budget for our staff there. It's been a great change, and we can credit that to Rex and the team. The only other thing is right tree right in the right place, the pine trees, and just mention it again that Wairoa 19.5% increase is going to be hard on a area that's socially deprived. So yeah, kia ora for that. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora, Michelle. Just before I come back to you, Councillor Curtin, it's all been said, but just once again, a big thank you to the staff. I know, before my time as a councillor, realise now you just don't know or appreciate the work that the staff at this organisation put in, and so I feel it's our duty as councillors to all go back to our constituents and let them know that the work that goes into something like this is massive, and we really appreciate it, so thank you. My only point I would raise, and it's in regard to Chair Barker said about the complexity, and just by default, as we keep getting bigger, obviously this organisation will become more complex. And in business, I've learnt that that in its own nature kind of adds risk to things going wrong. So I guess just letting you know, James, that I appreciate that, and we obviously need to remain close to you and when things do go wrong, and support you and ensure that this plan goes on track as much as we can make it. So thank you. I'll pass back to Councillor Curtin.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and just at risk of taking too long of your time already, I just want to round up and sweep up a little, and I want to pick up on the comments of my colleague Mike Paku, and that was in regard to capability and capacity within the organisation. And I think this long-term plan has come at somewhat of a cost to our staff. That capability and capacity has been stretched. And I just want to, beyond the immediate authors of the long-term plan, acknowledge the incredible work that has been done by the executive team, Ian, Katrina, Chris, Piri. All of that team have contributed extraordinarily well to the document, and they've had to agonise long and hard about this. And I think finally, Mr Chair, the comment, I think the councillors over the next 16 to 18 months are now acknowledging and recognising the fragility of our capacity and capability and the people that are working for us. And we will be putting our heads together to ensure that we're not adding to your burden, that we are responding to your needs, that we're able to put resources and assistance in wherever we can, because we acknowledge that our staff, the people that work for us, are the taonga of the organisation, and we will be doing our very best to ensure that you can do your job in safety and in good health. And Mr Chair, on that note, I'd just like to recognise and support the long-term plan.
Thank you. Councillor Foss.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Councillor Curtin. Just quickly, with our previous chair, there was many comments around family and what's most important and what comes first. And around this table, there's a very strong, if I was to move a motion, number one is family and well-being of our staff and everybody. Everything else comes a distant third. So I'll just reiterate the comments made to our previous chair, to everyone who's been involved and is with us around the council. On that note, Mr Chair, I'll do my secondary of the motion. Moving.
Thank you, Councillor Foss. So just to be clear, Councillor Curtin, you're moving all the recommendations en masse.
Just a point of clarification, Mr Chair. As a matter of process, did we need to adopt one of those recommendations first, or is it just simultaneous?
Just all together.
Yep.
All together, so you're happy with that?
Yes, indeed.
And Councillor Foss, you're happy with that?
I'm happy to second those.
Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now, as Chair, I wouldn't normally acknowledge guests that come into the gallery, but we've got a very special one. Welcome, Mayor Alex Walker from CHB.
It's a takeover.
So if we move on to next item, the HBRIC Statement of Intent.
I'm happy to just just to introduce the paper, procedural matter. We do need to adopt a statement of intent for HBRIC by the 30th of June. This has been through the Corporate and Strategic Committee and it's gone back to HBRIC for some minor amendments and has now come back for adoption, but I'll hand over to any of the HBRIC directors if they would like to make comment.
Councillor Foss.
Thanks, Mr Chair, and I'll be seeking to move the amendments. Just want me to speak now? Okay. Okay.
Oh, unless there's any questions.
Oh, well, I'm moving. No, I wish to speak.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Curtin.
Thank you. To those observers, HBRIC, it's a Hawke's Bay Regional Investment Company. Not the sexiest name in the world, and that may change at some stage, but it's actually exactly what it says. And further, the mission statement of HBRIC, I'll use that term, is to optimise the financial and strategic returns to Council from its allocated investment portfolio to assist Council achieve its vision of a healthy environment and a resilient and prosperous community. Mr. Chair, it's basically in a nutshell, it's this statement of intent is the relationship at minimum between HBRC and HBRIC to keep everybody safe, informed, requirements above and beyond. We will go for a period. It's very necessary to have, obviously, these changes in it and this document well understood and agreed as HBRIC earns its stripes. It is, if this is to be approved, to be in charge of currently around 400, aiming to be $600 million of assets by 2030. That's very significant, very positive for Hawke's Bay. And Mr. Chair, a key point in that document, there's an agreement there where the dividend flow from HBRIC to the council will be between $8 and $11 million per annum. Now that frees up the council, knowing with some certainty, at the very least, it will be receiving $8 million in per annum for the next few years, possibly up to 11, and that's subject to negotiation. So those kind of imperatives for HBRIC obviously sit with a commercial entity. On that note, I'd like to acknowledge the chair, Dan Druziasnik, of HBRIC. At the end of the day, the council appoints the directors of HBRIC, and it has to operate under the Companies Act and various other bits and pieces, Mr. Chair. So the changes you see in the paper there, plus the full document itself, really just set the parameters, hopefully, for HBRIC to grow and achieve the mission which I described earlier. And I thank and acknowledge all colleagues who have contributed to that SOI. So moved.
Thank you, Councillor. No. Would anyone else like to speak? Yep, is that that's a yes, Rick?
Look, yes, I'd just like to say briefly, this is a fundamental tool of importance for this regional council and for ratepayers. It's via HBRIC, with its investments, we have the potential to grow those investments and derive income to reduce the rate burden. The issues that Councillor Williams spoke about the pressure that ratepayers are feeling on the weight of their rates, and the issue about increasing investment to remediate the problems of the past and to deal with the future is going to require more money. We can't do this without having some innovation, some thought, and to do something slightly different than what we've done before. So this is the tool we've got, and we've geared it very conservatively. We're not going to do it rash, but it's there as a potential to raise the value and the income for this council so that we can reduce the potential rate burden. It's going to take some time to develop the relationships. People are going to take some time to get the confidence and the trust in this entity, the way in which we do our business differently from what we've done. But this is a very good start. We're not doing it. It hasn't been done before. There is a model for this, and that's called Quayside in Tauranga. They're very successful with this. So this is the Hawke's Bay version. And on this journey, the sooner we start, the sooner we'll get to a much more positive place. So I have no hesitation in supporting this. I think we should have done this as a council many years ago. We're slow out of the starting blocks, but at least we've made a start. And I think in 20 years' time, the ratepayers at Hawke's Bay will look back and say, well, that was a good move.
Thank you. So if there's no further... Oh, sorry.
Just very briefly, the particular part of the statement of intent that I endorse the most, as I think I've shared with my colleagues in the past, is the regional focus. We're often portrayed as a regulator and a whole bunch of compliance inertia, but this is about enabling our regional economy and promoting as well as environmental, social and economic wellbeing. And I fully endorse the ambition within the statement of intent to look at opportunities to invest in growth in the economy of this region. Thank you.
Great. So no further speakers. Councillor Foss has moved that we adopt the HBRIC statement of intent. Councillor Curtin has seconded it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Move on to item 10, recommendations from the June Hearings Committee. Councillor Williams, are you going to take that?
Would you like me to move the paper first, Mr. Chairman, or speak to it? What's the... I'm happy to move and then speak to it if that would suit us.
Unless anyone's got any questions, we'll go straight to that. So it doesn't look like there is. So the floor's yours.
Yeah, well, I've taken.
Sorry, Councillor Curtin, second.
All right, well, just to take you briefly through it, there's some machinery boilerplate amendments to the terms of reference of the Hearings Committee there, which are relatively self-explanatory. It's just to make sure that the Hearings Committee is equipped with the tools it needs to either directly make or delegate decisions. Perhaps the more notable, the express provision now for the hearings panel to authorise this council to enter settlement or mediation, whatever it might be, in an environment court context. That hadn't been expressly recorded, as I understand it, in any committee before, and it's dovetailed with the delegation to staff where the Hearings Committee can say, like, say it's the tomato mushrooms or the water conservation order, what it might be, go to it and see if you can settle that out of court. Equally, we have recommended the assurance that the Hearings Committee have all of the powers within the Act to make decisions procedurally. The hearings panel for the Wairoa application had to adjourn effectively or granted a 6-month extension to get sufficient information into that process, and having those powers enabled us to do that. So again, it's all about just ensuring we're equipped for the job. There are some, so those are the aspects that really need this council's decision, being those delegations to the Hearings Committee and to various officers within the staff, and equally a retrospective delegation for the Omaranui hearing and the Clive River dredging hearing. I actually think we probably need the same delegation or the same expansion of powers for the Hawke's Bay Regional Council gravel consent. And I'm tempted to move that the item 6 be appointment of hearings panel for the Clive River dredging resource consent and Hawke's Bay river gravel consent. Confirm that the hearings panel for both of those has those powers.
Agreed.
And in the future, because we're amending the terms of reference for the committee, that won't be necessary. It's just a retrospective catching up to get us back to the future, if you like.
Happy to support that change to
that amendment.
Yes.
And yes, and just noting that we've appointed hearings committees for a range of different matters. One of the more interesting topics that I think warrants a brief mention here is the quite legitimate point that's been brought to the table by the Tangata Whenua representatives on the Hearings Committee about mana whenua participation in decisions involving their rohi. And the classic line in what I might call Pākehā law is that if you are a member of Forest and Bird, and Forest and Bird is a submitter on the application, you can't be on the Hearings Committee. You certainly can't be on the Hearings Committee if you're on the executive of Forest and Bird. But it's very different if you are mana whenua, and to say to someone from more broadly Ngāti Kahungunu can't be involved in an application involving Hiratonga or whatever it might be, I don't think anyone would think that was tika. So what we've asked for is the Regional Planning Committee to give us some advice on how we manage the balance and the correct balance between mana whenua participation on hearings panels, and equally their ability to participate in those processes as submitters or otherwise. So that's an advice stream that will be coming our way, and that's noted in the paper as well. With those comments, move as amended on point 6.
Api. Oh, sorry, no. Api.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. So I would take the opportunity to support the comments from Councillor Williams. It has been a concern amongst our mana whenua representatives that that particular aspect could really do with the legal clarity, mostly just for the assurances of holding up the goodwill of the process, but also because it's one of those peculiarities where there may not be any monetary gain from participating in that space. It's more about the expression of knowledge, but we welcome that clarity and we look forward to what legal advice brings to the table. Kia ora.
Thank you, Api. Councillor Foss.
Thanks. It's just reminded me the Auditor General yesterday and throughout the year is doing a lot of work in the conflict of interest, perceived conflict of interest space, of which will have direct implications around the definitions and interpretations of those for the exact issues that Councillor Williams has just brought to our attention. So just a heads up on that. I think we should pay a lot of attention to that as it arrives, but I also endorse Councillor Williams' thoughts.
Any further speakers? So therefore we have Councillor Williams moving the recommendations plus the amendment, and Councillor Curtin seconding both of that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? No. Carried. So now on to the Hastings by-election.
Thank you, Chair. This is reasonably self-explanatory. Do you want to speak to it at all, Leanne?
Just if anybody has any questions.
Obviously, just two decisions in there in relation to the order of candidates on the voting paper. Sorry, I'm just bringing up the paper myself. And of course, the appointment of Peter Martin as the Deputy Electoral Officer.
Councillor Foss.
Just quick question, Tex. That's exactly how the previous election was run. I think that alphabetical way of things. There's no change there for clarification. Just maybe an unusual question, but if no one is nominated, what happens?
Stays vacant.
If no one is nominated, we will then call for another election.
Okay, right. There's the answer.
There's the answer.
Direct from Australia. Thank you.
An Australian.
You can't have no one representing Hastings.
Why not? Why not? Yeah, why not?
I don't know. You know you're in Hastings
exactly.
and Craig's in Hastings.
The two that do it do God's work.
They're carrying it all.
Yeah,
you look after Rick's clients, I'll look after the others.
There's a review coming up. We'll just drop Hastings down one.
Yeah.
It's a viral.
Great, thank you. So if there's no further questions on that, can I have someone happy to move those recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Williams, and thank you, Councillor Van Beek, to second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. I'll speak the devil. Representation review.
So look, the project brief is outlined along with the timeframes for the various different steps along the way. So with that, we'll take the paper as read and happy to take questions, Chair.
Any questions? Councillor Williams, I think you had your hand up, did you?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I just wanted to make sure, paragraph 5.2, perhaps our governance advisor could assist, says determine the number of Māori and general constituencies. The rest of the paper seems to be focused on the consultation program around the number of Māori constituencies. Are we doing an equivalent consultation round on the number of general constituencies? For example, when we went to consultation on Māori seats, there were various proposals with anything up to from 8 or 13. Does Hastings go down to 2, as we've just discussed? Napier goes up to 6. You know, there are various permutations within that. Is this all part of the same process? Is it a different process? Do we not need to consult on the general constituencies? Is that another stage? What's the story?
So, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. The process is an overall review of all of the representation arrangements. The reason we've gone back to Tangata Whenua to get their preferences and views on whether there should be 1 or 2 Māori constituencies is because it's new and we want to make sure that we're doing the best for that community of interest. The communities of interest representing the general constituencies haven't seen that kind of change, so we just need to review that and make sure that it still meets those needs. And the consultation on that process comes through the submissions which we call for after council's made a decision around what they think that initially might look like.
So just to follow up on that, we're not proposing, or the staff are not proposing a pre-formal consultation process on whether it's 2 seats for Hastings versus 3. We're just going to go straight into formal consultation on that.
Yes.
Councillor Curtin.
Well, Mr. Chair, and I think my colleague pointing out that the word general, which I had overlooked, I assumed that this paper was strictly about Māori constituency and hadn't appreciated that we're also considering general constituency, and I would have expected a complete paper on boundaries, numbers, the entire gamut to be presented to us for consideration now, as opposed to, so when does that happen? Can you tell me that?
In accordance with the timeframes that I've stipulated, which is why I've asked this, is that that we will work on developing the options and bring that to a workshop on the 28th of July for council.
Let's be clear that we are not determining now 1 or 2 constituencies or the like for general constituencies. There will be a subsequent paper that brings that to us. Okay, that's better.
Chair, if I can perhaps help out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Leanne, but my understanding is that once a representation review is triggered as a consequence of the decision to create Māori constituencies, there is a fully prescribed set of considerations for that representation review, which includes the general seats. The steps that are really detailed here is that pre-consultation around the Māori constituency detail to feed into the broader option analysis, which Leanne has suggested is there in that workshop on the 28th of July. Those papers would then come through for CNS, I see there, on the 18th of August, and then subsequently to council. So there's considerably more steps to go through, and then obviously the public consultation will be something we will be promoting to all residents and ratepayers to have an opportunity to submit on.
I'm pleased I understand that.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you for clarifying that, because that's my first question. The second one is just on the proposed flyer. I think there's a map there, proposed Māori constituency options. The one on the left has the 1 big constituency, but the words below said to elect 2 councillors. That should say 1 or 2. Shouldn't it not?
No.
Because above... 2. Well, hold on. Because above, everything talks about 1 or 2 in the same document.
1 or 2 constituencies, not 1 or 2 representatives. It's 2 representatives.
Although, sorry, through you, Chair.
There has... Well, maybe you're about to clarify this. What decision has been made about how many wards there will be?
So my understanding, when the initial decision was made, that if the total number of councillors that council resolves to have at the end of the representation review is 7 or 8, if it's closer to the minimum, then we only have 1 Māori constituency. But if we resolve to have a larger number, so sort of 9 plus 2, which would be 11, then we tip into 2 Māori constituencies. Have I got that wrong?
Totally wrong.
Based on the population of the region and the population on the Māori electoral roll, this council can elect 2 Māori councillors.
Can.
No,
Whether they come from one constituency or two is the question that
That's the
we're
question.
no,
deciding.
I know. Thank you. But the point was, I have no problem with that. It's just, have we actually made the decision there'll be 2, not 1, or 1, not 2? I thought that still depended on this entire review.
That is the
Because
decision.
It does actually.
Yeah, you're right.
yes,
total
so
number of-
there's a horse and
That
cart.
is-
here.
Sorry, the total number of councillors is determined through the review. But there has been no indication from anywhere that we would take the councillor numbers down to 7, which would be
One.
One seat.
But that's,
One seat.
that's presumptive though, isn't it? That,
So
I
that needs to be
concur with
canvassed in
Councillor
the review.
Foss, is that the actual options ought to be tabled there as well. So if, for example, we determined that the council should only be represented by 7 councillors, and then there'd only be 1 Māori constituency member. So it's a fair point.
correct, yes.
Just so,
But
managing
can I
alienations,
just-
there's some clarity is required here, I
Don't
think.
play with what you don't have to.
So I had exactly the same reaction when I read it last night, and I just didn't get a chance this morning to speak to Leanne about that, because that was my understanding too, is that question of
Yeah.
the number of total councillors is yet to be determined, and that determines whether there are 1 or 2 Māori constituencies, and then there's a subsequent decision about whether it's 1 ward or 2 wards.
Understand, which is why I picked up on the diagram.
Yep.
I'm not saying it should be either. I could not remember making that actual decision.
We'll just go to Councillor Barker on Zoom.
Can I just make the point here that we didn't propose to the general public changing the number of constituencies or reducing the number of constituencies for the general seat. So everybody understood the implied was we're going to remain with 9. That being the case, then the proportionality has got to be in there. So there was 2 constituencies. So if we go back to reducing the number of constituencies for Napier, Hastings, etc., down to 7, well, then I think we have changed the game completely in the impression we've given the public, and we need to go on to a really deep round of consultation. So the public's mind, it's what we've currently got, plus 2 Māori seats, 2 Māori councillors, yet to be determined if it's 1 or 2 seats.
That's right. Because people submitted like that.
Mike, and then, sorry, Hannah, where were you? No.
First of all, I absolutely agree with Councillor Foss' reading on this. Yeah, that is it. The same conversation that's happening over in Hastings. But I also absolutely support Councillor Barker's kōrero. The good work that you have done up to this point to get to Māori wards, unless you live up to what you have promised us, which are 2 seats, kia tūpato. Kia tūpato, that's all I can say to you. I understand what Councillor Curtin is saying, and perhaps you're being presumptuous in your kōrero, but you have publicised your whole debate around that there will be 9 general councillor seats, of just expressing my opinion. Councillor Curtin, you may not agree, and that's fine, but I'm telling you what I understand. It's sitting at this table, listening to you guys, and the journey and the frustration of having to listen to you as you try to debate this. You have basically promised us 2 seats, is what I'm saying to you. You will do yourself a mischief if you were to reverse that at this point in time. I understand the public have the right to put submissions in, and that's fine. They'll do what they do. But it will go back to the electoral office, who will actually have the final decision on what your numbers will be.
Yeah, but excuse me, Chair. My point was actually, in all our discussions in the narrative, it's been like 9 plus 2. There's no, I don't think there's issue there, other than suddenly there's a document going out which pre-assumes some decision which hasn't been actually made there. And I agree with what our general narrative has been. I have no problem with it. But I just do not know where somewhere we've said how many, and maybe this is a chicken and the egg thing. There's a desirability of where we're going to, because we all voted on something like that. But just this, or are we being a bit, am I being a bit semantic? I mean, tell me, you looked at the same thing, CEO, and had the same question, so did I. So to keep the decision safe, you have to have the correct process. And so, have we done that? Where is it?
Yeah, I'll bring Councillor Williams in, who's excellent on process.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was never in my mind did it occur to me that we're talking about anything but 2 Māori seats, right? What I'm talking about is just ensuring that I understand the consultation pathway on however many seats there are of general seats, right? And just to pick up on Councillor Barker, or was it Chairman Barker now, what he said, we did put various options up for the consultation on Māori seats that had 8, 9 or 11, I think. 7 certainly wasn't one of them because that was too low for our... But so all I wanted to make sure is that without prejudice to this timeline, because we are effectively now just saying let's get this timeline going so that that process is in the right place when it needs to be, I'm just wanting to ensure that there is a process at the right time for that, which I'm reassured, that we know whether we're going for 8 plus 2, 9 plus 2, 11 plus 2, or whatever the heck it might be. Because those were the options we consulted the public on. They might expect it would be one of those things. So that's where I'm at. So I'm happy to sign off on this. I think it's great. Let's get that thing going. That doesn't mean we can't build in that other step as well. And I apologise if we've thrown things into a curveball unnecessarily.
No, and thank you for bringing that up because I had never thought of that option of actually lowering the total number of councillors because...
I'm not promoting it, don't
No, no, but because the Local Government Commission, who initially determined what our representation would look like, initially initiated the council at the number 9, and it's always been 9. And with the review of workloads and that from the Remuneration Authority, who determines the remuneration.
Yeah, no, but that's what. So can
And
the
the
CEO
size of
help
the
us here?
council,
Because that's
but-
what this review's
but
all about.
yes.
I thought it moves us from.
I can put in when I'm talking to that flyer. I can always just say based on the current population numbers and the way it fits with the current population and the number of councillors. Would you prefer 1 or 2? If it goes down to 1 and the total number of councillors goes down to 7, then it will only be 1.
But as Councillor Williams said, somewhere in there, and maybe it's again the next stage, the whole discussion has been sort of advocates of 2 into 9. Most of the discussion was 9 plus 2, and you know, and I accept that, no worries at all. But I'm just trying to see. I don't see that.
So when you adopt your proposal for consultation in August, you will then you will make some decisions about this to take to the community, including the total number of councillors and the number of Māori constituencies. We're just technically at a point in time right now where it is available to the council in theory to reduce the number of councillors, which would mean that in terms of Māori constituencies, you could go down from 2 to 1. And that's technically available to you in developing your proposal and adopting your proposal for consultation. But I think with the suggestions that Leanne's made for modifying the communications around this, we can manage through that.
And are our papers correct?
Well, I think just with respect to that, the flyer, that we just need to look at that, that's all.
Yeah, the plot. But are our papers correct?
The paper,
the
the
decision
paper,
that
paper
it
to the
provides.
best of my knowledge, is correct.
Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to comment on this because my colleague Mike Pucker has raised the issue that we have made an undertaking to, particularly the Māori community, around this. However, it would be remiss of us unless we followed a correct process, and the correct process is we, at some point, will consider and deliberate on the number of constituencies, general constituencies. Now, if we preempt that with a decision at this point, then we're open to challenge, and in these circumstances there are people that may wish to challenge. So my sole interest is to ensure we get this right and we don't mess up and have to backtrack at some further point in time. I concur with him, the sentiment is there, but look, let's get this right and make sure we dot our I's and cross the T's.
Thank you. Councillor, your wisdom's appreciated.
I do believe I think the question was asked here, is it the chicken or the egg? So what I'm hearing here is, yes, we've kind of talked about 2 seats, but we're not really going to quite commit to that right now, but we're going to go out and consult Māori. Good luck. Good luck, because we will take chair. I can guarantee it.
But I think
Look, I'm not threatening. I'm just stating how it's going to go.
so. You hopefully pick up an intent. There's that stuff where the intent was, and you saw that when we voted, and the narrative was.
Oh, yeah, look,
9-2.
I
But
actually get that.
We can't actually legally do some of those things unless we do a consultation. This is why I just picked up on that little bit, because I cannot remember that point. And, you know, at some stage, so chicken the egg, or whatever I said, it's just, let me put it this way. My understanding, with all respect to due process, is we will land in 9 general councillors and 2 Māori seats, because that's how I understand things. It may change.
Or you can arrive at 8.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm open, subject to, but that's kind of where I thought we were going. But there must be a process to follow to arrive us at 8 or 9 or whatever, which is where we seem to be a bit mucky. Because it should be quite, I don't know, functional. It's.
Chair, could I just make the observation that I think we're in an unusual situation here where normally council would develop a proposal and take it. The pre-consultation that we're proposing here is particularly because there is this question of whether for Māori constituencies we have 1 or 2 wards, and the desire here is to go and do some pre-consultation so that when council makes some decision making, it has canvassed the views of tangata whenua on that question. In developing your proposal to then formally consult. So we're just in a slightly awkward position where we've got a conversation to have before the normal decision point.
Yeah, look, we'll try and wrap this up, but just...
I just want to say, when we voted that day, we voted for 2. So unless we're going to backtrack from that decision, which is a whole other process, that's what we voted on. So that's where I sit. That's where I believe we've come to. 2 seats, either 1 or 2 constituencies.
Yeah.
Sorry, Will, I don't think you can see my hand. Putting it up.
Oh, no,
Or
sorry,
what?
you're tiny on the screen there, Michelle.
Yeah. Oh, that's a change. Kia ora, yes, that was the understanding that there were 2 seats. It was about how many constituencies there were going to be, because if you were offering 1 or 2 constituencies, and so if there's 2 constituencies and you've only got 1 seat, how do you split a person in half? And that was what we went out and talked to our people about. As we understood it, and it was said in the Regional Council Hui that the 9 seats would remain and that we would be looking at 2 seats due to the calculation population.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
That's just my understanding.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, my point of order is the resolution reads 1 or more Māori constituencies. So that's what we actually decided. We didn't say 2, we said 1 or more. That's the resolution.
I think we said 2. Yeah, I'm in the centre that we actually said 2 extra councillors, but the debate now is to discuss whether we do that by having 1 large ward or 2. That's exactly what I'm at. If we have this other debate about how many then are we left for the general, then that's a totally different story. That's not what we were voting on.
Sorry, Chair.
That's a matter of a thing for the what do you call it? The
workshop.
No, the electorate person to sort out what's the legal side. Yeah.
Chair, can I try to be helpful here? We are tending to use interchangeably the term constituencies and Māori members, elected members. So the decision to create 1 or more constituency was silent on the number of Māori members, and that is precisely because that decision is a function of the decision on the total number of members And that needs to be part of the process of the representation review and the steps that lie ahead. So apologies for any confusion and any presumption that has occurred. That is still a step to take. And so the question at this point is whether or not there are one or more or two constituencies. Obviously, if there are two constituencies, that presupposes that we're going to need two members to
Just as
fulfill.
obvious as that you could have two members for one constituency.
And we understand that.
Two votes.
We understand that.
Yes.
You do not have to make this difficult, but you are going to make it difficult on yourselves if you continue down this pathway. That's all we're saying to you.
I think we need to go back and have another look at that motion.
Can I?
Well, you just read it out, didn't you, the motion?
No, that was this one.
The resolution's
No, that
clear
was a
and obvious.
previous one.
Okay, we're probably not achieving much more here. So the resolution reads, agrees the project brief and timelines for the 2021 review. Are we okay for someone to move this just for the sake of moving along? I mean, what I'm seeing is no one's wanting to change the intent. It's just making sure we've got the right process here. That's the way I'm reading this discussion. So is it,
I think it's a bit more than that, Mr. Chairman. I think it's about making sure we have the right conversation. We don't want to take a backward step. We made a giant step forward in regards to establishing Māori wards, and the fact that it was unanimous. You don't realise
how...
how...
equation that told us we were getting 2 seats.
How important that is,
Yeah.
and was to Māori. So,
Chair, I'm happy to move the resolution.
okay, do we have a second?
Chair, I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Do we have a seconder?
Well, I have a question. I'm happy to move things along and second, but I just need the assurance again of this. There's a process we have to go through.
Yeah.
Right. So well, let's just put that on that railway track there. Who we ask, how we ask, it's another discussion. It's just the things that we've locked in as a council, codified, are, as Councillor Curtin said, the resolution said one or more, right? Okay, so that's locked in. Another railway tracks. The other one is, as I said, what my understanding is as a councillor, where I landed the other day, and to perhaps help. I certainly didn't mean to stir you up or in any way other than provide clarity, because as we've seen, following the right process makes the decision safe for everybody. It's not meaning to retrospectively go back on intent or anything. It's just an annoying process, perhaps. And I think there's a big discussion we must have about the makeup of this council, which is due, and we're doing it a bit earlier than we were going to. I don't know how that lands. I know how I think I'd like it to land, but I don't know. So I'm happy to second this, the process, subject to normal consultation with Perry, who helped guide us here, with our RPC reps, with the messages they've sent about the messages that perhaps the messages that this advertising may send the wrong message, so we just make it safe. So on that basis, in your recommendation, CEO, that it is safe as per, we're not preempting anything, I would second it to help, subject to what I've just mentioned.
So I think in terms of the publicity material, we just need to review that we are clearly explaining to everybody what's involved here, including explaining both the sentiment of this council as expressed around this table and the process steps we're in for the tangata whenua we're engaging with, so that there isn't a misunderstanding. The unfortunate situation I think that you find yourself in is that you legally cannot resolve today, or could not have resolved on the 26th of May, the number of councillors, because that is a prescribed process that must follow a representation review, and that was always flagged as the next step by statute that you need to follow. So you just simply can't jump that step, I'm sorry.
Okay, Api, have you got a question, or do you want to speak to the motion as a question? Okay.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, so I've got a couple of questions here under considerations of tangata whenua on the same paper, numbers 7, 7.1, 7.2, particularly 7.2. Could you help define for me what boundaries are, how they're measured for Māori in this case, and how membership of Māori, for example, if we're looking at the 8 PSGs that are representative at this council have memberships that they represent, which is different to residents within a boundary. And so for me, I think there's an opportunity for clarity there, because I'd love to know, are we talking about, if this is Māori representation, are we talking about those that they represent, or are we talking about those that live within the rohe? Because for Māori, it's about our affiliation with those natural elements, not necessarily where we live as a result of historical actions, which you can go through any claim history to figure out what that was. We were driven away from those spaces in order to cohabitate in other places, but that doesn't mean we've become disconnected from our desire to participate in environmental decisions. And so what I'm asking is, how do we define boundaries and population for this process? Ugly question, sorry, but it just occurs to me. I would like to know.
So the boundaries are those set for electoral boundaries. So they're based on population, which is based on mesh blocks. And when we look at the maps, we will try, to operate within some of the Tai Whenua boundaries, if possible, but the ones that we absolutely have to adhere to are the ward and territorial authority boundaries.
Okay, so the government gives us clear stipulation to vote only those whose feet are on the ground within the geographical boundaries of the domain of this council are entitled to be considered, I guess, the constituents of this discussion? That's what I just said? Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Harvey. Just around that sort of detail, we'll be able to pick up a lot of that in a workshop coming up on this. So if that's okay, to continue that sort of question line.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's just that before I go back to my communities, I want to know whether I should bother engaging with those who are related to Hawke's Bay but live out of Hawke's Bay. If I don't need to engage with them, which I don't based on that answer, then who we elect to be our representative only needs to be a conversation held within the boundaries, not the world.
Okay, thank you. Now, there's still questions. So Councillor Ormsby and then Councillor Ward.
I just want to know how we're going to go about communicating in these huia iwi as first level of consultation when, I want to make sure that we're not looking like we're changing the script to how they were originally consulted about this. So how are we going to manage that? How's that going to be managed? Because it might be a big surprise for them to say, oh, now the option is one, when all the examples that were given had two.
Look, I think the suggestion from Leanne, as she described it, hopefully adequately coped with that, so that, that the consultation was based on the current number of councillors and the current population.
Yeah.
I think we can go as far as to say that there has been no indication from councillors of an intention to reduce the number of councillors, but just point out there is a process step that councillors are not in a position to decide the number of seats until they go through the representation review. And so provide some reassurance around that.
That's the messaging that needs to be heard.
That was good. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Just apropos Councillor Foster's reference to the diagram, I'm trying to understand the audience for that diagram and when and whether it needs to go out at all. The formal council proposal for notification is post this pre-consultation on the 25th of August, and prior to that we have we're already, let's assume, up to 7 July because it's the only date in front of us. We're checking in with the PSG representatives. We've got a hui at each Tai Whenua, we've got huia iwi feedback, etc., etc. So where was that flyer going to be published, and who's it going to? Because maybe we don't need to release it.
Maybe we don't. So that flyer was proposed as a means of inviting people along,
right? And
it was proposed by the comms team.
So yeah, it would be targeted to the Tai Whenua or the PSGs,
yes.
for example. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Finally, one more question.
Sorry, just very briefly. Is it possible in that communication to state, as we do in a number of our consultation documents, that this is the council's preferred position. Is that permissible in this type of consultation process?
Section 97A of the Local Government Act. I don't think it's needed.
can't be
I don't think it's
sued.
needed.
It will be, sorry, just to clarify, so through the process of consultation and the representation review, that is a clear preferred proposal, is your initial proposal that you publicly notify? Is that what you were referring to, or is this pre-engagement?
Pre-engagement.
No, at the ultimate
Yeah.
consultation,
So,
the adopted consultation process.
Oh, it will be a proposal.
It will be
yes.
a proposal.
Yes.
So therefore, we can state our preferred position.
At that point,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we have a mover. Do we have anyone to second?
No, I said I'd second it, subject to this discussion, so I think we've landed in a better place.
So you're happy?
Yes, subject to
happy?
that, yes.
Okay.
Rick,
Thank you, Councillor Foss. Chair Barker, do you want to speak to your motion?
Oh, just to say, well, I got my mic up. Say thank you to the team working through this. James has got it quite right. We are in a process, and we have to say that we're in the process, and we can't be predeterminative. All of that's true. Otherwise, we're putting the cart before the horse. The second thing, which is murky, this is that we're having a pre-consultation with Māori, as I think we should do. As there's one constituency or two constituencies. If we are consulting on two constituencies, the clear implication is for two representatives. You can't have half a person in one and half a person in the other. But to Mike's point, I agree with him absolutely. It's been clear to everyone in all of this discussion about Māori representation on council that we were talking about having two elected representatives. And I believe absolutely firmly that we have to keep faith with that. To not do that would be a complete breach of faith and a complete breach of trust. And I will not be party to that. So let's be clear about that. We've said two, we stick with two, and we have to adjust all the Pākehās to make it all happen. Well, that's what we do. That's my view. So I think this is going to work out fine. Very happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Foss.
Yes, so thank you, Councillor Barker and Mike particularly. So yes, I continue to second the subject to everything I've mentioned. I'm very nervous about our lack of understanding of where everything is. And the codification of resolution versus expectation, I think we need to make sure we're all on the same page. I think we actually generally are.
Councillor Williams.
I just wanted to point out, thank you, Mr. Chairman, that in all of the options in the consultation document that we discussed on the 17th of March, including options that involved 7 councillors, there were 2 Māori seats. Just so everyone's aware, I don't know how that works, but that's what everyone would have read. Māori and general. Just stating it for the record. Thank you.
Just the motion on the following subsequent motion didn't say that.
Yeah, the motion didn't, because it had to, as the CEO has explained,
Yeah.
it had to be neutral in its terms, because we don't know the number. But the consultation document had for all the different scenarios up to 11 councillors and down to a total of 9, including 2, that there would be 2.
Unless we're going to
That's
get
interesting.
5.
Okay,
So the constituencies for us is whether we have 2 in that one constituency or 2 in the
It's
2 separate
1
ones.
and
Yeah.
2, yeah.
Okay, any further speakers?
Or just briefly, no, I shouldn't do this, but look, I think the point that I'm interested in is it's undoubted that we're intending to have 2 Māori representatives. Whether it's one constituent, one geographical location, or 2, that's another matter. And I just urge, I think we've entered a new age. It needs a little bit more trust and a little bit more accepting that we are within a tight legislative framework we need to work in. There's no intent whatsoever to overturn the undertakings we've made. It's simply this is the reality we're faced with, and we need to work together with our partners to work through those issues without any acrimony or accusations of backing down. It's simply a matter of this is the process, and that's what we're working on. I just hope we go through this with a little bit more confidence in each other.
Absolutely support everything Councillor Curtin has said. I think, but when the communication goes wrong, it is the Māori who have to go in there and pick it up and put it back on track. That's who has to go and fix it up, because we're the only ones our people will listen to. And that's my point here. When it goes wrong, it is the Māori faces who have to go in there and pick it up. And actually, we're getting a bit tired of it, to be honest, especially when it's self-inflicted. Kia ora.
Happy.
Thank you. Dan speaking in support. Could I ask for, when the workshop eventually arrives, some clarity on number 12, just to make sure that we're not saying that we're going to find $20,000 out of nowhere, but rather that this is, and I'm assuming here, this is just a matter of us moving budget items forward in the calendar. So I can wait for the workshop if you like, James. It's just a...
It's been funded in the LTP.
Yep, cool. Number 13, I'd love to know, either in the workshop or today, how we're planning to measure those. And also in the workshop 15.4, whether council has made a decision on whether the representation review will go to hearings or whether it'll be a decision at council. And finally, number 11, under other considerations, how soon have we initiated contact with the PSGEs with regards to the date and timelines specified there? And also, when can mana whenua, tai whenua and tangata whenua receive a schedule of the proposed visits and pre-engagement in our areas? Thank you.
We can provide those answers offline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Any further speakers? Councillor Ormsby.
I just noticed there's quite a lot of feed huis, so maybe they should just be feedback huis.
No, leave the feed in there.
No, feed huis. And the table at 3. So maybe just a correction there.
Taking away our kai, Gil, stop.
Okay.
Yep. Just sorry.
No further speakers. Rick, would you like to sum up or?
Yeah, someone's reading the fine print.
No, he's
No. Okay.
I'm fine. Please put the vote.
Okay. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now, my first chairing has gone a bit pear-shaped.
You're doing well, Will. You're shocker. It's been a shocker.
Recount.
Bring back Buck.
It was 4, Trump told me.
Would everyone like to have a quick break for a cuppa, knowing that we haven't even had lunch?
That's the thing you've said all afternoon.
And then a suggestion could be that we reconvene and have the workshop that we were going to have.
Yeah.
2 minutes time.
Yeah.
And then,
Back to the meeting.
yeah, is anyone good?
That's good. That's fine.
Sure, I just had a problem with that because the LG conference is before our next meeting, and I want to discuss those remits.
Yeah, we can.
No, sorry.
Come back
You
after
come
the
back
workshop.
after the workshop.
We'll hear from Engineer Walker, and then we'll come back to our meeting. 7 o'clock tonight.
I still think it's nonsense too.
It's fine, mate. Let me explain it to you in constituency.
Okay, let's break. 5 minutes max.
And we'll reconvene at 4.
Where's our Labour man?
What's the time?
Over in Oz enjoying himself, eh? No 15, 20 minutes today.
Oh,